Welcome back to Quest for Truth. As we've been studying God, we've kind of been looking at the attributes of God. But now we're going to take a little bit of a step back and look at the scope of God. He's far greater than we can imagine, and it's because it's outside of our comprehension as humans to actually comprehend how great and big God actually is. And so to get a clear understanding of this, we're going to look at Acts 17, verses 22 through 28. So I'm just going to read the entire text first, and then we'll talk about it. So Paul stood in the midst of the Areopagus and said, "Men of Athens, I observe that you are very religious in all respects. For while I was passing through and examining the objects of your worship, I also found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. Therefore, what you worship in ignorance, this I proclaim to you. The God who made the world and all things in it, since he is Lord of heaven and earth, does not dwell in temples made with hands, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all people life and breath and all things. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on the face of the earth, having determined their appointed times and the boundaries of their habitation, that they would seek God, if perhaps they might grope for him and find him, though he is not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and exist, as even some of your own poets have said, for we are also his children." So Paul here is describing the one true God to these men of Athens who believe in all of these many false gods, these idols that don't do anything, that just kind of sit there and have a limited space that they take up. But he's trying to explain to them what the real God is. And so in verse 24 here, he says that God isn't confined to the temples on earth. Well, why? Because he created much greater things than the temple. He created the entire earth. He created the universe. And so how could a God who created the universe be confined into this building that is on the earth? And that's one of the things that, if you look in with Solomon, when he built the temple, it's like, I believe he says, how could the God who created the universe come down to live in this temple on the earth? And again, he wasn't confined to that temple. He wasn't confined to the tabernacle before that. And so he's still not confined to any kind of temple or building or place that we can have here on the earth. He's much too great for that. And then verse 25 kind of continues along the same logical thought pattern to say that God doesn't need man's help as these idols do, because they're created by man. But he says God is greater than man. Why? Because he gave the very life to the men, to people. He breathed life into them. And so he gives life. Not only did he create all things that made him greater than that, but he gave life to man, and that makes him greater than men. Now, I think at this point, there's an interesting kind of thought that comes up. If God is so great that he can't be confined in a temple, if he's so great that he doesn't need men for anything, if he's created the entire universe, then why would he give thought? Would he? Would he even give thought to lowly mankind? When you think about the scope of the universe, we are a very insignificant portion of the universe without any knowledge of, what he's revealed. But then continues in verse 26 to say that God orchestrated all the events of the earth. And so right when you think, well, this God must be distant because he's so great that he can't be confined to earth, and why would he have any dealings with such an insignificant people on earth? Paul says, but he has appointed times and boundaries of habitation on earth. He is active in the world, and he's determined these different things, and he's working in the lives of people and in the hearts of people to bring about what he has appointed. And so then verse 27, after it kind of appears that there's some kind of, that God is near, it says in verse 27, to seek God and you will find him. Well, how can we find him? Because he is near to everyone. So that means he's physically in the physical sense of ourselves, mankind physically. He's near to us all because he's everywhere. I mean, that's the only way that he can be near to somebody who's at all different sides of the globe, is because he's everywhere. But he doesn't just exist here as, if you're think about having a conversation with someone who's not paying attention to you and you're talking to them, but they're just kind of zoned out and not hearing anything that you're saying. It's not like that. He's listening and he's paying attention, and he's actually not just physically here, but he is accessible to us. It says, if in verse 27, when you seek him, you can find him. And so not only is he working in people, but when you seek him, when you turn to him, he will accept that, he will be there, and you can find what you're looking for in him. So he's active, he's accessible. And in verse 28, and I think this is probably the most powerful verse here, for in him we live and move and exist. There is no getting away from God. There's nothing outside of God, not in the spiritual sense, but in as we exist physically. There is no getting away from God. It's unavoidable. We can't leave him. There's nowhere we can go that we can find a place where God isn't, where God won't know, where God won't see us, and God won't know what's going on in our hearts. There's no way that we can become that, have that kind of relationship with God, of him completely forgetting about us or not knowing that we exist. He will always know that we exist, and he will always be near to us. All we have to do is reach out to him. And you might have been kind of thinking it already as I've been speaking about not being able to get away from God, but David writes of this very thing in Psalm 139. And the whole psalm is really about what we're talking about. So we're gonna read through the whole thing and then kind of briefly summarize the points that David is making here. But Psalm 139. O Lord, you have searched me and know me. You know when I sit down, when I rise up. You understand my thought from afar. You scrutinize my path and my lying down. You are intimately acquainted with all my ways. Even before there was a word on my tongue, Behold, O Lord, you know it all. You have enclosed me behind and before, and laid your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is too high, I cannot attain it. Where can I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, behold, you are there. If I take the wings of the dawn, if I dwell in the remotest part of the sea, even there your hand will lead me, and your right hand will lay hold of me. If I say, surely the darkness will overwhelm me, and the light around me will be night. Even the darkness is not dark to you, and the night is as bright as the day. Darkness and light are alike to you. For you formed my inward parts, you wove me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, and my soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the depths of the earth. Your eyes have seen my unformed substance, and in your book were all written the days that were ordained for me, when as yet there was not one of them. How precious also are your thoughts to me, O God! How vast is the sum of them! If I should count them, they would outnumber the sand. When I awake, I am still with you. Oh, that you would slay the wicked, O God! Depart from me, therefore, men of bloodshed, for they speak against you wickedly, and your enemies take your name in vain. Do I not hate those who hate you, O Lord? And do I not loathe those who rise up against you? I hate them with the utmost hatred, because they become my enemies. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me, and know my anxious thoughts, and see if there be any hurtful way in me, and lead me in the everlasting way. And so, just quickly, kind of to summarize the main points here, say verses 1 through 6, God knows all things. He knows in the intimate details. He knows who we are personally, and he knows our thoughts. He knows what we're doing. He knows why we're doing it, and he knows us better than we know us, and he sees the heart. And then verses 7 through 12, this is God is everywhere. We can't get away from him, and we can't escape his presence, and we can't leave. We can never leave him. He's always here. And then verses 13 through 16 is like we were talking about before, where God is active. He's actively working in the world. He's like in Acts, it was talking about more the kind of general activities of men and things, and that kind of things, where you have certain nations and building and kind of those kind of aspects. But here he's talking about specifically about he formed us. He created us in our mother's womb, and he knit us together, and he made us who we are. And so that's what God is, he's doing. He's active from the very beginning in our physical lives, where he's created us, he's made us, he's given us all of the attributes that we have, and then he's ordained a path forward for us. And then the verses 17 through 24 is really that's David seeking God and crying out to God, and being a part of what God is doing. And that's him accessing God. When he says, search me, O God, and know my heart, he's seeking after God, putting his heart out there so that God can see who he truly is, so that he can become closer to God. So God he's everywhere in a way in which that we can reach out to him and we can know him, and that he's working in our lives to make us grow closer to him. But big picture here, God is fully present at all places and at all times. He's actively at work in the hearts of man, and he's easily found when anyone will seek after him. So that's the vastness of God. That's who he is looking at him from a high level, trying to see he's uncontainable, and we can't comprehend it fully, but we can see how big God is and how great he is. And so as we see a God that is uncontainable and so vast, we can just truly worship him for who he is, because we know that he is worthy of our worship because he is so great. I'll see you next week here on Quest for Truth.